welcome. Thank you for joining us. So before we get started, I just want to make a quick note about the Q&A after the presentation. So hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Throughout the presentation, you can submit questions in the app, in the Appian Events app. So you can just go into our breakout session and you should be able to add them there. You can see what other questions have been asked by other people, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end of the session. If we don't get to them, we'll either, you can stick around and chat with us afterwards, or we'll answer it in the app afterwards. So we'll get to your questions eventually. All right. So, in case anybody's in the wrong room, this presentation is BOAT, the new wave in process orchestration and automation. I am your host, Allison Montemayor. I have been with Appian for about 12 years now, and I'm a lead product manager focusing on our process orchestration capabilities. Presenting with me today is Joe Scott Curtis from Aviva, and like I said, we'll be talking to you about BOAT. So, enterprises are finding that they require a variety of technologies to automate their business processes from end to end, right? They need to be able to connect to numerous systems throughout their enterprise and incorporate users at the right times. And of course, they need software to be able to orchestrate all of these different items in the workflow, right, from start to finish. But people are finding that all of the vendors in these different markets, right, from low code to BPA, iPaaS, RPA, they're all starting to look very similar as they're starting to introduce a bunch of overlapping automation capabilities, right? So it's difficult to choose the right vendor because it's kind of hard to tell, well, what exactly do they do? How do they differ from each other? And what types of use cases do they solve? Will they work for my use case, right? So this phenomena has really been driving the market towards a natural consolidation over the past few years, right? Towards unified platforms that are able to orchestrate and automate end-to-end business processes. So Gartner is calling this new market BOAT, right? Not the boats that you're familiar with, but business orchestration and automation technologies. But what does that really mean, right? So a BOAT is a class of software technology that enables enterprises to automate and orchestrate end-to-end business processes while connecting multiple enterprise system of records via any applicable integration method. Okay? So this market really encompasses all the benefits of those specialized markets in a single consolidated platform. By unifying these numerous automation technologies with a strong orchestration layer, it's enabling enterprises to transform their business by being able to automate their processes from start to finish. Okay? Now, these unified platforms just address a wide range of use cases, right? Because you can integrate with multiple systems by a variety of methods, right? APIs and RPA, right? You can incorporate your users at the right times and give them a really great and satisfying user interface, and user experience, right? And you can orchestrate all of those things across those users and the automated activities using the orchestration. So one other thing that boats do is they leverage embedded AI to improve all of these experiences, right? From whether it's intelligent orchestration of tasks or just better automation capabilities. They're using AI to enhance your workflows and provide additional value. Now, here at Appian, we love this new market definition, right? Because it's really codifying all of the different capabilities that we've been bringing together in our platform for years. So let's talk about how Appian fits into this space. We'll start with the automation portion, okay? So Appian has a variety of automation capabilities, right, that you can choose from based on your use case and what works in your enterprise ecosystem. Now, if we think back to our definition of BOAT, right, that enterprise connectivity was one of the key capabilities, right? Specifically connecting multiple enterprise systems, the system of records, via any applicable integration method. So that means, it's not just one type of integration method. You need both API integrations and RPA to be able to ensure that you can integrate with all the different types of systems in your enterprise, because they're all different, right? Everybody's ecosystem looks a little bit different. So Appian makes it easy to connect to your systems that have APIs, right? So as a baseline, right, you can call any REST-based web services using our easy-to-use, low-code HTTP or OpenAPI connectors. But we also have several out-of-the-box connectors to a variety of enterprise systems, like Salesforce, SharePoint, Google, DocuSign, and a lot more, right? These provide a guided, application-specific design to really streamline your integration experience. And each of these connectors has a variety of APIs that you can leverage using our low-code integration designer. But what if you have a system you want to integrate with that doesn't have an out-of-the-box connector, right? Well, first, you check the app market, because the app market has a wide variety of connectors that are provided by our partners and other members of the Appian community, right? But even if there's not something there, you can always build your own, right? Using our connected system template framework, you can integrate with any system that has APIs. Between one of these methods, you can integrate with anything. And of course, APIs are the most robust way to integrate with external systems, but unfortunately, many systems, particularly those old legacy ones, may not have APIs available for what you want to automate, right? So that's where RPA comes in. Appian makes it easy to connect to these web applications through the browser or desktop applications like Excel, just as your users would, right? Now, and even for those really stubborn applications that just don't play nice with bots, we have image recognition capabilities, so you can extract text from images, search for elements on screen, and so forth. Even if it doesn't have APIs, you can use RPA to connect with those systems. And regardless of which automation capabilities you need, integrating with those systems is easy to do using our low-code designers, right? So here we can see how easy it is to build robotic tasks, for example, right? You can drag and drop different types of actions from the palette, or even record a series of actions just as your users would perform them. So all these enterprise connectivity capabilities are great when you've got very routine work to automate. But what about tasks that require decisions, right? A little bit more context in order to figure out what the right thing to do is. Well, that's where the intelligent portion of our boat diagram comes into play, right? Appian's AI and document processing capabilities are great at classifying, extracting, and summarizing data, which reduces the amount of time that your human workers need to spend on those types of activities. In fact, we've got a whole suite of AI skills that let you build, configure, and train custom machine learning agents using low-code. You can use these AI agents to automate a wide range of tasks, right? Like classifying, extracting data, or summarizing documents, emails, or text, right? If your use case doesn't fall into one of those categories, you're not out of luck. We've got our prompt builder AI skill, which lets you just tell the model what you want it to do using plain language, and the generative AI model will yield a result based on those instructions, right? So all these different AI capabilities make it really easy to automate a variety of tasks as part of a larger business process, right? Which ultimately increases your efficiency, and it frees up your human workers to focus on the work that they are uniquely capable of doing. So, as you can see, choosing the right tool can really be critical for building robust and reliable automations. And having a wide variety of tools available in a single platform reduces friction, and it makes it easy to choose the right tool for the job based on the strengths of that tool, right? And of course, you can mix and match between these different automation technologies, which also means they're interchangeable, right? So you can replace your human tasks with automated ones as you seek to get more efficient in your process, right? And maybe at the beginning, that's replacing it with RPA because you don't have any APIs available. But maybe later when your IT team gets around to exposing those APIs you need, you can switch over to API integrations, right? And all of this is possible because these activities are orchestrated in a single end-to-end business process. Which brings us to our next section, right? Our orchestration capabilities. So in Appian, you can orchestrate people, bots, systems, and AI all together in one workflow, right? Which is really helpful for driving maximum process efficiency. And we've been a leading vendor in business process automation for years, right? And I'm sure you heard Matt say, we've got 20 years of process experience, right? And we've seen our customers have a huge amount of success with our process orchestration capabilities over all that time. So much so that they want to continue growing and automating even more. So we're seeing a rise in use cases that require a totally different level of scale than Appian was used for before, right? These use cases look like straight-through processing, right? Where you have automated systems that are designed to eliminate manual intervention and complete these transactions completely autonomously from start to finish, right? These processes look like microloan application approvals or insurance claim submissions. You also have scheduled processing, where you need to run a business process on a recurring basis, like end of day, end of month, or end of year, right? These are often looking like data anonymization or log consolidation and reporting. And finally, microservice or API orchestration, right? Where you need to manage and coordinate the interactions between individual services in a distributed system. And these are often the ones, like you might have heard me talk about on stage today, these are often architectures that are geared towards really high scale. That's why people want to be able to go towards a microservices architecture. So these often look like something like mutual fund transaction processing. Now, these different types of use cases really highlight three fundamental business needs, right? The first is high performance, right? In such a competitive landscape as we're in today, speed and efficiency are really crucial for businesses to grow and thrive. So mission-critical applications need to process data faster, handle more users, and automate more tasks to meet growing demand. Dynamic scaling is becoming increasingly important, right? Because growth or shifts in demand aren't linear or even predictable, right? So automatic scalability is becoming a necessity so that companies have confidence that they will remain reliable even at peak demand, right? And finally, resource efficiency. Because businesses are concerned with the return on every investment, especially when it comes to software, right? That means you want to prioritize software solutions that are not just functional, but are also cost-effective, efficient, and scalable to meet changing needs. So all of that is why we've introduced Appian Autoscale, which is a new separately licensed service in Appian Cloud that dynamically adjusts process execution capacity based on demand. Now, Autoscale is specifically designed for high volume, high throughput automation, and it delivers 100 times the processing power of our standard engines, which allows you to execute tens of millions of process actions per hour. And all of this capacity is delivered on demand, right, as needed, so that you don't have to pre-provision resources. That means that when your processing demand spikes, Autoscale ensures that your systems are going to remain performant because we are dynamically allocating those resources based on your growing workload, right? We're scaling up those resources when the demand is higher. Now, all of this is facilitated by Appian's Kubernetes-based cloud-native architecture, which provides the infrastructure for our task executors. Now, switching to these separate task executors for your process execution capacity not only allows us to horizontally scale, but it offloads processing from your site node to these task executors, meaning that your user-centric applications are unaffected by spikes in process demand. So none of your users will see the effects of the increased demand. So let's talk about the business value, right, that you get from Autoscale. Now, when your operations are automatically scaling with demand, that means your IT team is free to focus on the strategic work that's really going to make an impact in your organization. It means those spikes in demand no longer require any sort of manual intervention. And that gives your IT team more bandwidth to innovate. And it's not just about automation, right? It's also about sustainability. Autoscale optimizes your resource usage so that you're not only processing transactions faster, but you're making the most out of your resources. So that means no more over-provisioning resources like around the clock in order to be able to meet peak demand, but instead, Autoscale is more efficient, it's cost-effective, and it's built to grow. So you're getting more out of what you have without wasting resources. And finally, Autoscale consistently handles your workloads at any scale. This allows you to meet your SLAs and keep your customer experience really high. Your teams can deliver faster and more reliably, which ultimately drives more value for your customers. And by isolating process execution from the rest of your system, it enhances your overall user experience, right? Your users will continue to get uninterrupted, high-quality service regardless of what kind of process demand is there. And ultimately, that leads to increased engagement and customer loyalty. Okay, I'm sure all that sounds great. How does it actually work, right? So like I said, Autoscale is built specifically to focus on straight-through processing, service orchestration, and other unattended workflows, right? That's what allows it to operate at the highest scale, right? You're doing all of this stuff, it's automated start to finish. So to leverage Autoscale, simply go and opt in by checking a box on the process model. It's really very simple, right? You don't have to create new process models. You can leverage it on your existing applications with minimal effort, okay? And of course, you think, well, what capabilities do I have? What can I use at high scale? So Appian automatically focuses the design experience on a tailored set of nodes that are ideal for these types of unattended processes, right? So we focus on a specific set of nodes, and the design experience is kind of focused on helping you get those compatible nodes and that kind of thing. And with that, we've got a lot of in-product guidance and documentation to help developers know what to use, whether you're building new process models or migrating existing ones. So the design experience is consistent and familiar with process modeling today. It's backwards compatible, so you can easily migrate existing models with minimal changes. You get a guided design experience to know, what's compatible and what isn't. Plus, auto-scaled processes can easily interact with processes that are running on our standard engine, right? This is really important because since Autoscale is focusing on a tailored set of nodes for automated use cases, sometimes you'll have exception flows that are happening at lower scale that use unsupported functionality, like assigning a task to a user, right? So this means that Autoscale can serve both high-throughput business processes and also integrate seamlessly in with your other processes that are orchestrated in your system. And for these processes that run in Autoscale, we have a seamless observability experience where you can monitor and troubleshoot these processes. Now, there are a different set of challenges when you need to monitor and take action on a large volume of processes, and Autoscale is providing the tools for you to be able to do that. So first, we've got aggregate data about process executions right front and center, which lets you identify any trends in utilization or errors. And we give you lots of details about how each of the process models in your system are contributing to that overall usage. We've also got improved troubleshooting tools for monitoring processes. By making process history easier to use, it makes it faster to identify the root cause of errors and reduce overall time to resolution. And when you're working at such high scale, that's going to be really important. So let's see it in action, right? So we've got an insurance claims processing application, right? And the main process for handling claims already runs in the standard engine, okay? But these claims don't always come in at a predictable rate. So we need this process to be able to handle unexpected spikes in demand. So we're going to update it to run in Autoscale instead. So I can go and check the box to enable auto-scaling, and that will focus the design experience on the set of nodes that are compatible with Autoscale. So the process modeler filters down the palette on the left to show only supported nodes. But I'm converting an existing model, so I need to check that all the nodes I've already got in my process work or not, right? So I'm going to hit validate, and we can see that the exception flow here assigns uses a robotic task and a user task, which aren't supported yet. So luckily, since Autoscale is interoperable with the existing engine, I can just route that exception flow back to the standard engine using the start process smart service. And in that process, I can use the robotic task and assign that task to a user because it's not happening for every single process instance. Now, support for additional functionality will be added over time so that you can continue to automate more and more at scale. Now, once you've got processes running in Autoscale, you can monitor them in the new Autoscaled Process Activity tab, right, where I can see aggregate insights to help me track patterns in utilization and errors. So I can see these trend charts here at the top, so I can quickly identify if there's been a change, right? If I see a spike in errors, I know that there's something up. And then I can use the grid at the bottom to understand how each of these process models are contributing to those overall trends. How are they behaving? How many processes are running? How many errors are they having? And so forth. If there's a particular model I want to look into, I can drill down to see all of its process activity. I can look for those with errors to be able to take action on them, right? I can open up specific instances in monitoring mode in order to understand what might be happening in them, what's causing any issues that might have occurred. Now, if you've ever had to troubleshoot anything, you know how challenging it can be to hone in on the root cause of a problem. So we've made some improvements to process history to really help you see, like visualize, how the data in your process is changing as your process executes. So each node will show which process variables changed, and you can drill in to see the new values of those variables, which will really tell you if some error happened, you can figure out why the data was in whatever state it was in. So there you have it, a familiar design experience and enhanced monitoring capabilities. Okay, so you've heard all about how the product works, but now you want to hear about an actual experience using it. So I'm going to invite Joe up to the stage to talk about Aviva's experience as part of our beta program.
Okay, that's me. Hi, I'm Joe Scott Curtis. I've been in the automation team at Aviva for a little over a decade. I've probably worked with about half of the room in that decade as well, so hi guys. So I started my time at Aviva as a frontline operations member, so I was handling motor claims for our customers, commercial customers. One day, the business analyst from the automation team came in to my area and was looking to understand our processes. Within a few weeks, I was working alongside him as a business analyst. That gave me a lot of exposure into the world of software development, and naturally I kind of found my passion for that. So I moved into RPA development initially, before moving ultimately into Appian, which has been my specialty ever since. So during that time, I've worked on a range of different applications and processes for many different business lines. And as a team, we've grown to dozens of applications which handle hundreds of business processes for thousands of users, and with many millions of transactions per month. For the last 4 years or so, I've been a member of our Centre of Excellence, when we look to simplify our approach to delivering solutions through patterns and frameworks, supporting our core development team as well as our federated or citizen development teams as well. Another key area of the Centre of Excellence is that we will look ahead to the future, upcoming technologies, with a kind of view of what we can use them for and how they can benefit our estate and our customers. So at my core, I am a developer. I'm not a public speaker. It's my first time doing this sort of thing, so be gentle with me. So why did we choose to participate in the beta? So I'm not going to read through all the slides, but I will kind of touch on a few of the main points as we go through. So as we continue to increase the number of transactions through organic growth, new applications, it's really important to us that we maintain performant applications, whether that be straight through processing or user-driven journeys. Performance is key to us. We also weigh this against our sustainability goals. We're always looking at ways that we can reduce our impact on the environment. Since any improvements to productivity will have a direct benefit to our customers, obviously this auto-scaling beta is something that was very much of interest to us. So we had a few use cases in mind for our beta. and I just want to touch on one of those today, so the transaction handler. So the transaction handler is essentially a framework which gives us a way of controlling when we process a transaction. So if I give you an example, somebody was to call one of our APIs, asking us to create a demand, do some things, automate some back-end processing. We may choose to process that immediately in real time. We may choose to hold this on our staging table for when is a more appropriate time, and that could be, within a few minutes. It could be within an hour. It's just going to depend on kind of spikes in volume. So from our point of view, we kind of see this auto-scaling features as a chance to kind of safely explore these improvements that we can get in performance and throughput without any risk to our customers or to ourselves outside of the time that we obviously spend in the beta. So moving on to the beta itself. So how did we choose to actually approach this? So we had initial conversations with Appian over a couple of weeks. We kind of decided what we would want to look at, how we would want to approach it, the types of things that we were looking to get out of it. And Appian then provided us with a dedicated environment outside of our normal environments, a dedicated auto-scaling environment. So what we did is we took one of these processes that goes through our transaction handler framework. We wanted to kind of see how that would compare versus the standard engines versus the new auto-scaled engines. So we took a mock-up of that, and for the first round of testing, we kind of kept it simple. We just wanted to kind of get it working, familiarize ourselves with it. So we took a simplified version of that, and we ultimately ran through about 6,000 transactions. We then had lots of kind of two-way feedback with Appian, so kind of talking through our experiences, some, potentially some gaps that we saw in, I'll be honest, so there was a gap that we saw early in like the monitoring side of things, but that doesn't exist today, and actually when we entered round 2, these gaps were already kind of addressed. So we were very impressed with what we'd seen initially, so we went to increase, for round 2, we wanted to kind of tackle that in 2 ways. The first being, of course, increase the throughput. The second being to increase the range of activities which the process was doing. So we were including things that weren't in the original round. So we had things like reading from, writing from records. We had some stored procedures. We had some sub-processes. We had some asynchronous or synchronous sub-processes. But ultimately, we made these improvements, we made these enhancements, and then we ran through at much higher volume. So we started off round 2 with around 72,000 transactions, so significantly higher than round 1. And again, very impressed with that. So we moved into around about 400,000 transactions for the end of round 2. And from there, we'd actually kind of seen enough of what we wanted to see. We saw what it could do for us. So we stopped that there. So how did it go? So as you can see from the slides, at the lower volumes, we saw an increased throughput of around about 1.5 to 2 times when we compared it to our standard engines. At the medium volumes, again, that increase actually went up further, and we saw that increase to about 4 times. And then at the highest volume testing, we saw about 4 to 6 times improvement. I think there would have been a few other things maybe that we would have liked to cover during that time, but again, what we saw was excellent. One thing we did see is that there are, and I think Alison's touched on a couple of these points, there were some implementation considerations that we need to be aware of going forward. The first one, nice and obvious, but the more transactions we were actually throwing at it, the faster it was able to handle them. So that was a surprise to me. I imagined it would be, fairly standard, consistently better, but yeah, like I say, as we throw more volume at it, it's able to cope even faster than it was before. Plugins is something that I mentioned and something that we did try. And again, coming back to Alison's point, not everything is supported by the Autoscale features at the moment. Certainly during the beta, some of the plugins we decided to try, we didn't kind of see as much benefit using these plugins as maybe the rest of the feature set. But again, this was much earlier on in the year, and I've no doubt that a lot of these things would have been addressed anyway. But I think ultimately, I'll let you go through the rest, but I think the main takeaway is that, we don't have any concerns over any of this. It's not that we are kind of worried about any of this. It's just that we may just need to think about how we approach these implementation patterns, maybe breaking things down to smaller pieces, sub-processes running certain functions on standard engines, and everything else through Autoscale. So how will we use this going forward? So sure, it's no surprise, but we were really impressed with the results, both from the technical side and also with the continuous support we got from Appian throughout the whole journey. Not only would this give us better throughput of our existing use cases, but this could then even lead us into new territory in terms of things that maybe we hadn't considered as appropriate use cases. But again, everything can go back on the table now, and we can be revisiting these again over the coming months. So if I take you back to our transaction handler example that I touched on earlier, we can reduce our reliance on the framework in kind of a couple of ways. One is that the transactions which are on there are going to run through it more quickly. Okay, that's obvious. But it's also then going to mean that we are able to bypass this framework in a lot of cases, because of kind of a lot of the reason that we have it there is around that control and that predictability of maintaining that performance. And actually, if we can achieve that with the auto-scaling features, there'll be many use cases where we can actually completely bypass the transaction handler. So things like, go back to the API example, somebody calls us to take some immediate action, we can do that immediately, and safe in the knowledge that it's not going to impact our customers or our front-end users. So we've absolutely no doubt from what we saw that we'll be able to optimize our existing estate and take these optimizations through to new processes, new applications as we continue to grow. So yeah, just before I leave, thank you very much for Appian for giving me the chance to talk about our journey. Thank you all for listening. And
All right, thanks, Joe. So hopefully between hearing about Joe's experience and what you've seen about our capabilities, hopefully you're excited about thinking about how your organization could benefit from Autoscale. So the next question is it right for you, right? Are your use cases a good fit, right? So there's a couple of criteria that you can use to really think about whether it might be a good fit for you. So first, do you have straight-through processes where there's minimal user interaction involved, right? Do those processes need to run at a very high scale? Or perhaps does the demand for those processes vary significantly over time, right? Does it fluctuate unexpectedly or expectedly, right? Do you need to orchestrate several different microservices together in a high throughput process? Or perhaps do you need to process a large amount of data, right? All of these, if any of these sound like your use case, it might be a good fit. This is the kind of stuff that Autoscale does really well right now. And like I said, over time, we will continue to increase the types of use cases that we can do by having more and more functionality. So if you've got a use case in mind, if there's something that sounds like it would be a really good fit for you, whether it's a totally new process that you haven't been able to automate in Appian yet, or maybe it's an existing implementation that you have that you want to roll out at a higher scale to reach more of your customers, then reach out to your account executive, right, to start that conversation and see how you can get Autoscale and how it can work for you, okay? That's all we have for our presentation. Thank you guys for coming, for your attention. I will move on to some questions. I'll use the app here, and if we don't get to any of them, you can either come talk to us afterwards or we'll answer them in the app later. So let me get this. Okay. All right, first question. Will auto-scaling be available for self-managed customers by using Appian on Kubernetes? The answer is not quite yet, not right now, but that is something that we're looking at. We know that there's a lot of demand from our self-managed customers for Autoscale. So that's something that we're looking at, but not in this initial release. Okay. Is Autoscale licensed separately? Yes, it is licensed separately. There's a lot of things that you will want to talk about with your account executive in that realm, but basically you'll be licensing a specific amount of capacity that you're going to need. And so, that you'll estimate over time what that's going to look like. And then you don't have to have fully over-provision your resources around the clock, but you're looking at what you're going to need, and that's how it's going to be licensed. So talk to your account executive for more information about that. Do we have the same process analytics capabilities available for processes that are auto-scaled? So our standard engine has a set of process analytics capabilities that kind of come out of the box with it. Autoscale does not use the same kind of back end that our standard engines does. So the existing process analytics won't be available for auto-scaled processes. But throughout your process, when you run it, you can connect to your data stores, you can connect to write to records and things like that. And so we definitely encourage people to write the data that you need for reporting in your process through those, which means it can be reported right alongside your business data. In the future, we will have more out-of-the-box analytics capabilities for auto-scaled processes without having to write it for yourself. But yeah, that's where we're at for now. Is the cloud database auto-scalable along with the new auto-scalable processes so that these scaled processes don't take away resources from other processes? Okay, so this is a great consideration, right? Which is that processes are just one part of your system, right? And not every part of your ecosystem is going to scale the same way that your processes do, right? So that's definitely a consideration, right? That was one of the things that kind of Joe was talking about in terms of implementation of you might need to break some stuff down into smaller batches to rethink about how you're connecting to your databases, to other parts of your ecosystem in order to make sure you don't overwhelm them with the amount of scale, right? So there can be a decent amount of nuance there. We definitely want to provide guidance, and that's something you'd also kind of want to work with your practitioners about to try and figure out what's the right balance, right? What's going to work for your overall ecosystem. But yeah, that's definitely a consideration to be mindful of. Yeah. Okay. Was autoscaling ever tested in combination with Appian Transaction Manager application? We're just kind of talking about a transaction manager kind of variant. So that is something that we've looked at, right? We have used them together and see what that means. There's a lot of stuff that's in transaction manager that we don't necessarily need with Autoscale. But there are definitely some things that you can think about in terms of like prioritization that we might not necessarily have right now, but there are things that we might have in the future. So there's definitely something to think about in terms of using them together. But a lot of the value of Autoscale in terms of not having to like throttle your throughput and all that kind of stuff, a lot of that is handled. I don't know, do you have anything you want to say about Transaction Manager?
Yeah, I mean, I think the transaction manager itself, probably no issues there. I think it's just going to depend on the transactions themselves and again, what types of activity you're doing within those subtasks, if you like. So I think, yeah, you'll find a way to make it work. Yeah. Whether or not it's everything today or, you can incrementally add to that over time. Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's see. Are there plans to autoscale processes with attended nodes or UI tasks anytime soon? Okay, so yes, we don't have attended tasks in this first version of Autoscale. That is something that we're looking at in terms of how do we incorporate human users into these processes, right? So not yet, but that is something we will be doing in the future. So at least, like I said, for the time being, you can use these processes with your standard processes in order to be able to assign tasks to users for kind of exception flows, right? If you're doing mostly straight through processing, but you occasionally need to assign a task to a user, you can call the standard engines for that kind of use case. But that's definitely something we are prioritizing in the future. Okay, let's see. Is it possible to throttle the autoscaling feature in order to not break other services? Okay, great question. This is kind of similar to the transaction manager question that we're kind of thinking about. Right now, we don't have any kind of out-of-the-box throttling capabilities, but this is stuff that we'll be looking at, right, in terms of, what do people, like, what do our customers need in terms of how this interacts with your overall ecosystem? Do we need to have out-of-the-box features for that? Do we need to is it more of a changing your design paradigms and things like that? Or can you leverage some other tools in the meantime, like Transaction Manager? So those are things we're thinking about, but right now there's no out-of-the-box features for throttling it.
I think it's probably worth pointing out it's not one or the other. If you have existing mechanisms that will handle this or existing frameworks that already address this, you can use Autoscale in conjunction with those. It's not going to completely replace them.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great point. Okay, and this last one, I think is the last one. How should we communicate this capability in the right way to avoid confusion in terms of domains, integration versus process orchestration? Appian has all kinds of different, like I said, we've got a lot of different automation capabilities, right? One of those is being able to integrate with other systems, right? And so, I think that's kind of the point of the new market, right, is the unified platform, the value of the unified platform, being able to have the orchestration layer and those automation capabilities all together in the same product, right? So that's really the value that we're providing there. We're making it easy to orchestrate all these different things because you have all of those different types of automation tools that you might need. So there's definitely some overlap with iPaaS. That was kind of the point of the boat thing, right? There's a lot of overlapping automation capabilities, but that's the benefit of the unified platform here. Okay, I think, okay. Okay, so then the last question is Appian moving away from the process engine-based architecture in the long term, or are the scaled processes going to coexist with the engine processes? That's a great question. I would definitely say long term, our goal is to have all processes running on the new engine at some point. We're a long way away from that. Right now we're really focusing on these really high throughput, high volume processes for now. But in the future, this is the engine that we are investing heavily in, and this is where we will want kind of moving over later. Are we ever going to get rid of your processes that run on the existing engine? No, you don't have to worry about it. Appian's always backwards compatible. You don't have to worry about us suddenly dropping support for the old engine. But going forward, most of the improvements are all going to be kind of focused on the new engine, and we're going to be making sure that that is something you can use for all of your use cases in the future. So yeah, there we go. Okay, I think I've got everything. I think I've got it. If it's just looking at the UI, if I didn't answer your question, I'll be up here for a few minutes afterwards. Feel free to come chat with us, or I can get to your question in the app afterwards if there's anything we haven't answered yet. So thank you guys for attending. Hopefully it was helpful.